We're gonna go over how you can balance football and throwing in that fall sports season, and we're gonna start right now. So one of the most common aspects around throwers is that they tend to play multiple sports. We're freak athletes, we're beasts, we're explosive. Everybody wants to be cool like the throwers. So we tend to play sports like basketball, and in most cases, we also play sports like football. And if we're gonna try to balance a sport like football with throwing, we want to have a really good throwing season. We still wanna be able to get some type of training done during that football season. And sadly, in a lot of cases, especially the case of Javen Williams, you get so good at throwing that it makes you even better at football, and you eventually quit throwing after you throw 66 feet because you're a 5-star recruit and you go sign with Penn State and hopefully one day play in the league. Now, obviously with most throwers, we don't want that to be the case. We want throwers to be able to balance both sports and then go to the NCAA and actually become NCAA All-Americans for throwing, because that's the main goal here. So when we're looking at that off season for throwing, football comes into play and we have to break down the football season. So right off the bat, football season starts, we're gonna have 2 weeks of two-a-days in most cases. During those 2 weeks of two-a-days, in most cases, you are not going to be able to throw. You're gonna be training at least twice a day, and in some cases, 3 times a day. You're gonna be very fatigued, there's gonna be a lot of heat, and there's gonna be a lot of soreness, fatigue, and just overall mental exhaustion. So during those first 2 weeks of the football season, the best thing that you can do is either accept the fact that you're probably not going to throw, or accept the fact that you might only throw once on the weekend and possibly just be able to get those drills. So that first key step, acknowledge those first 2 weeks are gonna be extremely challenging, and you might only get drills, you might only get 1 throwing session done, and you might not actually be able to throw at all. Now, as school starts and we get into week 1 through week 4, we start to get our schedule aligned. Typically what ends up happening when schedules change, a lot of football players, a lot of throwers struggle with that first week or 2 because we're just getting back into the rhythm. In Pennsylvania here, usually that first week of school will actually be off on the Monday, then we'll have school Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and then they'll be off again on Friday. So in that case, what I recommend doing for throwers that want to stay in shape in the off season, try to pick one day in that first week that you can go outside and you can get 30 to 35 throws. Here is the big factor. Recognize that you're not gonna be dropping bombs. Go out, just focus on your technique, focus on proper warm-up, and focus on those specific positions. That's the main factor here, is that during the off-season, if we're inside of that deep football season, we have to recognize that now's where we can make some big-time mental gains. We can focus on positions and just focusing on hitting those positions specifically to optimize our technique, because we're still gonna be fatigued, 1, from football practice, but 2, also from lifting that we're doing for football. Hopefully you're not doing those American football power cleans where you're catching a starfish. Now, after we get through that first week, I recommend picking one day on the weekend, typically I would say Sunday, where you're gonna get outside and you're actually gonna throw for a full throw session. So let's say it's week 2, week 3, week 4. We've got through that transition week. We've got our school schedule laid out. We've got our football schedule laid out. Now, I would recommend we go out on a Sunday and we get a decent amount of throws in. Go to the park, go to the high school, go to the track, and get as many throws in as you can. Keep the intensity a little bit lower early on. The second thing that you can do during week 2, week 3, week 4 is look at what days during the week are your easiest days of practice. Oftentimes, Mondays tend to be easier for varsity starters, okay? If you're playing JV football, oftentimes Thursdays tend to be your easiest day because you're going easier before the varsity plays on Friday night. So you can select, if I'm a varsity player, I could probably throw again on Monday, nice and easy, 15 to 20 throws. If I'm a JV player, I could throw on Thursday or Thursday night before that game on Friday. But select those 2 specific days and have a plan. Recognize you're gonna be fatigued, and recognize that you're just trying to get enough reps in during this off season so that you can build into that big season of indoor track or even outdoor track. Now, fatigue's starting to set in week 5, week 6, week 7, week 8. It's hard to keep throwing. The throw season is so far away. You're not overly motivated, and you're starting to dwindle with your motivation to get out to the shot circle or get out to the discus practice. One of the things that I recommend doing here is consistently revisit your goals. okay? If you can revisit your goals and look at the fact that you want to throw 60 feet, you want to throw 200 feet, whatever it is that you want to do, you can identify those specific tasks and help increase that internal motivation and internal drive. So week 6, week 7, week 8, try to really focus on digging deep. The next big factor, look at your strength of schedule. If your team's in the playoff run, you don't want to put yourself in a position where you might get hurt, where your elbow hurts, your shoulder hurts, your hand hurts, something along those lines, your lower back hurts because you're throwing too much. Make sure that if you have a game that is a pivotal football game, you don't actually throw as much during that week because the priority is football during that period. Still, you want to get at least one day in. Maybe that day is 50 to 60 drills. Maybe that day is 50 drills and 20 throws, something along those lines. But if you have a strength of schedule where it's a really hard game, back off of that overall throwing volume. Now here's the big kicker. As we work through and you see the light at the end of the tunnel for football season, it's starting to get cold out, but you still want to just throw week 9, week 10, week 11. Now, if your team's not going to make a playoff run, I would probably increase your throwing volume. If your team is going to make a playoff run, I would again look at that strength of schedule and I would look at your opponents. If I have a weaker opponent, try and get 2 days of throws, 1 day of actual drills. If you have a strong opponent, again, you're gonna revisit what we did in week 5, week 6, week 7, and week 8, and we're just gonna back off of those overall throws. One of the big factors of improvement that we saw with Javen Williams regarding his football performance is that because he became a better thrower, his footwork on the field drastically improved. He got more coordinated, he got faster, he was hitting harder. So oftentimes throws, drills, and even just throwing help you improve your overall football performance. And then the phone calls start. First it's Virginia Tech, then it's Rutgers. Then all of a sudden, it's Michigan, it's Penn State, it's Ohio State. The door opens and everybody starts dropping bombs. So be realistic with your overall goals. Understand at what time of the season you're gonna not be able to throw. Those first 2 weeks, it's gonna be tough. That transition week, it's also gonna be hard. During week 2, week 3, week 4, you might be able to add in a little bit more volume. Be aware of what you're doing in the weight room with your football team. And then the rest of the season, try to focus on the strength of schedule. Try to focus on your overall football team and what they need from you. Don't let them down. Don't put yourself in a position where you're gonna get hurt and maybe you can't compete. Make sure that you factor in all of these things and realize that just getting drills in and just getting a couple throws each week will suffice for those long-term games. If you guys need help with your programming, head over to peakstrength.app and you can download our app with throwing specific training. And if you're in football season, you can actually change that program specific to football. So hit those throws during the football season so that you can drop some bombs. Peace.